Gul Damar doesn't trust Ziyal. Quark wants Ziyal to make Hasperat souffle. And Gul Dukat drops the ball in more ways than one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, everybody.
Today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 6, Sacrifice of Angels, written by Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler, directed by Alan Craker. This was November 3rd, 1997. It's a Nog episode, so we are joined by Melissa Longo, of course.
Hello.
And what do you know? You know her as Celia Morales on Melrose Place. Melanie Smith has joined us, which everybody's like, that's not what we know her from. We know her as the shrinkage lady on Seinfeld.
Or the promiscuous one on As the World Turns, Emily Stewart.
Ooh,
Emily Stewart, yeah.
We were talking a little bit before we hit record about Melanie's fun on Seinfeld, and there's a lot to talk about there because we love Seinfeld, or at least I do. But everybody here does know her as Ziyal on Deep Space Nine, and so we're so happy to have you in this great episode and completing your awesome arc. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, really special to have you. And you know, this is your big episode. I hate that you're here for this particular episode because you did so but it's like
I requested it. It was my favorite.
I mean, it was a great episode. I love the performance in it. But in general, I mean, it's like you've been in so many episodes, and now we're finally getting a chance to talk to you, and it's like, the last moment.
Just in time.
It's like a great, like, you know how much fun it is to have a death scene in your career?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of actresses that get a death scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I got a chance to die in one episode on our show, in this kind of dreamlike episode, and Far Beyond the Stars, but I wasn't my character.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but I still got the chance. So, yes, it's like life after death after that moment. Right?
But it's very, the thing that I did love about Star Trek so much was when you're trained for the theater, you want to be theatrical, right?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of television, particularly coming from my early work on As the World Turns, for so many years, you're very much a talking head,
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to be much more dramatic and to be behind a mask like that and create another worldly being was so much fun. It really was so much fun. The makeup was not fun, but the work, yeah.
Actually, can you tell us a bit more about the pros and cons of working behind all of that makeup and all those prosthetics? Because a lot of people, they say, as they're getting the makeup put on them, it almost helps to develop their character as they're looking in the mirror and they're seeing this. But then there's also the difficulties of acting through all of that makeup and all the expressions that you're used to making that you can't make anymore. I don't know if there were more pros or more cons to that.
For me, the makeup was hard. I mean, it was 4.5 hours in the morning, and then it was about 2.5 hours to take it off. Because if you rip that, although Mark used to come in and they just rip it off his face. like 19, aren't you? Your skin just looks like hell. But I didn't just have makeup on. I also had a wig on, and there were like if you got a bobby pin jabbing in your head, you had to deal with that all day, right? Yeah. They weren't going to detach your face from your hair, like start all over, right? But what I do have to say is the cast was so compassionate and so generous. They knew what you were struggling with. So if I would, just sort of like go up on a line or something, they'd be like, it's totally fine. Just like take a deep breath. I know you have a headache today and there were days when I really was having headaches because there were like 3 bobby pins jabbing into, and that thing was heavy. So being able to work as a theatrical ensemble, that was a great quality. Didn't you find that as well? It was such a great quality about that show. Everybody was so well trained and so committed to the work and really wanted to tell a story. It was great. But the makeup was hard. And yes, you did feel it. It was temperature, you were in neoprene, your hands were covered, your head, your face, everything, you had on thick stockings and boots. And then they'd say, okay, go to your dressing room. We'll be back in a couple hours. You're like, no.
Yeah.
I'm going to invent something for Star Trek characters so they can prop their head up and take a nap. It's really good.
One of the things that we like to do on this show is give the praises and their people their praises and their just adoration, because I believe that a lot of the times people get flowers after they've gone already and past the point, and we like to as they say, give flowers to people while they're still here. And I would like to give you your flowers for the excellent work that you did on this show.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing that I think was excellent about it was, one, your genuine portrayal of this character, I thought was spot on and emotionally connected with me as a viewer.
Thank you.
The other thing I love about your performance is the way you hold Dukat accountable. There's a certain level of emphasis that you put on that, where it's like, no, I'm not letting you get away with certain things that he's able to do with other people. I love that accountability. And also your personality shines so much through all of that makeup that we just talked about. I read so much of your face through your eyes, and your facial expressions I thought were fantastic. So those are my flowers for you, Melanie, because
I accept them. That was such a nice mistake. Thank you.
Those are my flowers.
Feel free to send them to my door anytime you want.
Everybody that's watching right now is like, it looks like they've already arrived, actually.
Right.
My favorite color.
But my question for you is about the relationship that you have with Mark Alaimo on screen. And where did that is that something you just jumped into the mix and you built it right there on set, or did you have, tell me about it.
It was sort of, I think just as in real life, when you know who you are and you're in relationship, something gets born from that happens nowhere else. It's an amalgam and it's an alchemy. And it's interesting because there was an natural intensity to Mark, and there was a natural gentleness to the character. But the way I played Ziyal, and even when I met with the producers, I had a very different take on Ziyal than I think anyone had. I saw her as the ambassador of peace. I saw her as a spiritual child that went through the challenges in life so that she could change the world with beauty. And who better to change than your father, who's tough and militant and unforgiving. And I think that the moral of our story was love conquers all. As I kept loving my father, even in my anger with him, he came to truly love Ziyal. And in that moment when the awakening happens, which I think, again, it's a spiritual lesson in this, right? It was sort of a spiritual storyline that, he would have to come to really understand forgiveness after that, because I was the gentle part of his life. So it was fun to play that with Mark, because Mark did have a very strong, direct personality that really helped me play my character, right? And it gave me something to push against. And then it gave him something to fall against that was gentle, so it was nice chemistry with us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you find it difficult creating Ziyal after two other actresses had already played her? Did you find a freedom to make it your own?
I got Walter. Sorry, you guys, I had my cat out here before. I got a piece of cat hair. Walter White, my cat. I'm sorry, what was the question again? That
The other actors that had played Ziyal in the past.
Oh no, not at all. Because first of all, I deliberately didn't watch them. But I think as actors, as storytellers, you have to know the core story and the overall objective in the world for your characters. So to sort of look at someone and go, I'm going to imitate them or I'm going to go against what they did isn't core to the story that you're trying to tell. Even when I read for the role and I met with the producers, I wore a sundress. Everybody else was in like combat boots and I wore a flowing sundress and I sat on the floor on my knees like a child, right? Because to me, Tora Ziyal had been in an encampment for her childhood. She was like the flower that pushed through the concrete, right? And she knew something other people didn't know. So that if I couldn't play that story, I wouldn't have wanted the job, right? I was sort of one of those actors that I probably turned down more roles in my career than I did because I wanted to produce art. I really wanted to be an artist, not just a working actor. After I signed a long-term contract on World Turns, I kind of learned something that doing the same character every day is fun. But if you really want to evolve as an artist, you have to be able to do more. And you have to make decisions that are true, not only to the story you want to tell, but to the essence you want to give to the people watching. So yeah, I really didn't look for somebody else's portrayal. I just really wanted to tell the story that captured my heart.
That's really interesting. A lot of people say similar things about the auditioning process is somebody that just kind of came in and made a bold decision and did something that the others were not, or just interpreted the character in a better way than the other people that were auditioning. And Malissa, when you asked, if how different it was or how difficult it was playing it after a couple other people had already done it, I was thinking the same thing. Like, that seems like such an interesting thing. But Melanie, did anybody give you kind of put their arm on your shoulder or whatever and say, okay, so here is Ziyal's thing. Here's her future. She's going to die in the 6th episode. Like, did they give you like the whole overarching story of Ziyal, or was it just kind of a day by day thing where you found it out as the script came out?
Like, I got some of the story, but what was interesting was at one point, I was talking to one of the producers and they were talking about the fact that they needed to kill a character.
Whoever it is.
And they did. And I said, kill me. And they were like, I go, yeah. Like, I loved the role. I did struggle with the makeup and things, but I also really wanted to have a death scene. So I was like, well, kill me. And he's like, really? And I go, yeah, kill me. And so time after that progressed, and then the storyline came to fruition that they were going to kill me, and I was so excited. People were coming up to me going, like the other, my co-stars were going like, oh, I'm like, no, this is amazing. I'm going to die, and I'm going to get to do like a death scene, like so Shakespearean. I'm so excited. Yeah. So it wasn't, I did get some of the storyline and I, my love relationship and things like that. But no, I was never told at the beginning, because I don't think that they knew then that I was going to die. I think it happened a period after, or I assume it happened a period after that conversation. And when I was at the Vegas 50th anniversary convention, so many of the other actors came up and said, thank you so much for dying. You saved our job. I'm like, happy to do it.
Real quick, some Star Trek fans might find that to be familiar, that something similar also happened in the first season of Next Generation. That was also said at the Star Trek Vegas convention, was that on Next Generation, they were going to kill off a character. And apparently Marina Sirtis's Deanna Troi was the one that was going to get killed. but then Tasha Yar, I'm blanking on her name right now. What's her name?
Denise Crosby.
Denise Crosby, right? Thanks. She quit the show, and thereby saving Marina Sirtis's fledgling career on the show. And Marina didn't know that until whatever it was, 20 or 30 years later. So it's kind of another one of those things. But anyway, Cirroc.
Because I think they actually wanted to renew my contract. And I had said to my agents, this is really hard for me to do. I'm struggling. I was on set at 4 a.m, and it was 4.5 hours of makeup. And it was a hard job for me. As much as I loved the character, I really wish I had Terry Farrell's makeup.
Or Nanaz.
Terry Farrell's ready to put a couple freckles on the side of her head, I would have stayed longer.
What you want is the Jake Sisko makeup. He was in there for 4 minutes. They would powder his nose and he'd walk right out.
That's like fine. They're helping around, but like it was tough. They take you and you can fall asleep, but that was,
No, that's the common thing that we hear from everybody who had to wear extensive makeup. There's no way around describing their experience without talking about the makeup. It's that much of a consuming issue, right? It's like the number one issue.
And it's just as if if you were in a period piece and you're wearing a corset and you have to change your physiology. That was a fun side of the role, right? But like when you do theater and you're in costume, you take it off after a couple hours. When you're on Star Trek, you could be there like from 4 a.m, and you might not get out till 7 o'clock at night. And it's hard. It's a hard experience to have to do that every day. So my understanding though, and it was a while ago, my understanding was that we were talking about renewing. And I had said to my agents, I'm struggling and I don't know that I want to renew. I think it's going to be hard for me. Physically.
Well, I'm glad that you did do this story and tell this story, because it is an important story to be told. And I don't know if it's been done before, Ryan, you can correct me, but I believe that the story of a biracial person has never really been expanded upon until you show up. And we get to see somebody who's conflicting with both sides of their own identity, right? And I thought that you did a very good job of having the notes that were opposite to what the Cardassian tough notes are and the hard notes. You actually had all these subtle soft notes that made you wholesome and almost naive in a certain way. But did anybody kind of walk you through the idea of this biracial identity that we're trying to really get into and tell the story about?
I just want to say very quickly, sorry, because I know that if we don't, every Star Trek fan is going to beat down our door. We know. Spock, yes. Half human, half.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, beyond that, please continue. Sorry.
It's a funny thing. We look at issues that we experience in life as a form of judgment, right? But when you're inside something, your objective is the same as everybody else's. So for a biracial character, and I imagine for a biracial person, our objective is to be loved, to be seen as we are and for who we are and what we are. And that our purpose is to help others grow and to see something in a different way. So by taking on as a storyteller, as an actor, what some objectified exterior goal is, I think destroys the essence of the character and the actor's choice, right? So knowing that she was these two worlds fed, I think, her sweetness, because she came to a point in herself where she had to love herself. She was alone in the world. But she was also one of those, like, there was something sort of like Godchild about her, right? That when I have a theory that children that are hurt get us their own special crack in the universe. that connects them to a higher source.
Mhm.
And that is really how I looked at Ziyal. I looked at her as a child of God that had real purpose. And so that the birate, it's funny, a lot of my characters were groundbreaking that I played. On World Turns, I was like the first cougar.
Nice. Very nice.
I was.
Right.
No other cougar on television, and what the heck? So,
Wow, Cirroc, you really lit up.
I mean,
and
You
it's
know.
great to be a cougar when you're like 26 years old, but whatever. So, Tora Ziyal was there to say, and I think I even say it in one of my scenes, is that's what I want to do.
Mhm.
I want to bring these worlds together for a sense of love and beauty. And she felt chosen by that.
Mhm.
Not chosen by that, not hindered by it. There was still that innocence, like you said, right? There was still that innocence about her.
Mhm.
Wow,
And
that's
definitely a
some,
lot of hope. She was always hopeful, and that really shone through. And I definitely saw her being the light or the bridge between these two conflicting societies, which was really beautiful because there wasn't anyone else like her that could fill that role. So, and you did that amazingly.
Thank you. And she was truly happy.
Mhm. Yeah.
She found a home.
yeah,
Mhm.
she found a home.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if you again look at it from either an archetypal story or a spiritual story, she died when her father was forcing her to leave her home, and she was never going to do that again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you really watch these episodes from an archetypal and a spiritual perspective, they're beautiful stories.
Mhm.
With great,
It's like Shakespeare. I mean, this is
Yeah.
and these are they're like a bunch of Shakespeare all tied into one big Shakespeare. It's amazing the depth of each character. But I see Ryan is sensing to say something, so I'll let you go, Ryan. Before
Oh, I got like 50 things to say. I did want to add a little bit more to your question, Cirroc, when you're mentioning, the biracial thing. I mean, just to add a more extreme version of what this is the fact that Bajorans and Cardassians basically hate each other. I mean, it's not just like,
Exactly.
like in Spock's example, Vulcans and humans who live together in peace, or later on in Voyager, where B'Elanna Torres is the product of a Klingon and a human, which are allies. These are two enemies together. So as you were saying, you were like a child of peace, or like almost like a bridge or a symbol of the possibility between the two. But I also want to say that's some serious acting chops if you can go from a cougar to an innocent child of peace,
right?
from one show to the next.
Yes.
and that's what I'm saying about being an artist, right? Like it was so much fun to be able to play the characters that I played in my career, and to be able to switch that up and not have the same character for the rest of my life, right? That was what was fun about it. But, again, addressing that, even, how many timeless stories are told, right? Look at West Side Story that's being retold by Spielberg now, right? Like they hated one another, but what brings them together is the love of Tony and Maria, right?
Yeah.
It's always love that unifies, and there has to be a symbol of love between opposing forces. And that's, the work of an actor is to get the story right, because there's purpose in storytelling. And it's not just to like zone out with chips.
Right.
It
was
is
a show too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said ambassador of peace, and I would agree that that's what I felt your character was giving off. The energy was of peace, of resolution, of trying to bridge that gap. But I also think that it's important to say that you were created. I believe from the context of the show that you were created out of love, because I do believe Ducat loved your mother. The way he talked about her in previous episodes, he talked about her in a way where he was in love with her, and so you were created out of love. It wasn't kind of this unwanted child in that sense. So, and then in this episode, I think, Ducat makes it clear. He says, when Damar is kind of saying, questioning your loyalty and saying that he believes that, you're conspiring with the, Kira. Yeah.
Am I allowed to? I'm sorry. Sleep
but, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Real quick.
Ducat says, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say we got to jump to our break real quick, but I want to hear. It feels like there's a lot more to this, so we want to tackle it on the other side.
There is.
It's good stuff. So we're going to take a super quick break. Everybody at home, stick around. It's like a second and a half. You won't even know we're gone. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule. Everybody's like, can we just hear the end of the question already? The answer is yes. But first, we have to do the trivioids. And they're like, oh, come on. Sorry. So here they are very quickly. Chief O'Brien and Bashir recite a poem in times of war. Damar would like to toss that little Vorta out the nearest airlock. Yeah. Damar does not trust Ziyal. The Defiance signal is jammed by a rotating EM pulse. Weyoun accuses Ducat of talking too much, the nerve. Ducat accuses Weyoun of being anhedonic. Ducat is bummed that there are no statues of him on Bejor. Ducat drops the ball in more ways than one. Because there was that point where he actually dropped the baseball, like in the middle of the episode when he's got the Canar in one hand, the baseball in the other. I thought it was really symbolic that he just drops the baseball, kind of like when Malissa pointed out a few episodes ago when Michael Eddington couldn't find his lucky coin anymore or something like that. His luck ran out. This was maybe symbolic in that way as well. The Klingons are better late than never. Quark wants Ziyal to make Hasperat souffle. The Cardassian guard ruins that souffle. Odo is not ready for paradise, and the Defiant returns from the wormhole alone and triumphant. Now let's get back into it. Please continue.
What was the question again?
Well, the question is, I'm gonna premise it again, and what I was alluding to was the line that Ducat had in this episode when he's challenging Damar, and Damar's kind of challenging whether you're a loyal daughter, and Ducat says, "But she is my daughter. That may mean nothing to you, but to me it means everything." Right? And I just love that line. I thought that was like, that was just a great line.
I can hear him saying it means nothing to me.
Yeah.
But it means everything.
Yeah. And the way he delivered it was beautiful. And it actually expressed the way he feels about you, which is this protective father. He is a protective father. And a lot of the times we question whether he's a good dad or a bad dad, because in a lot of cases he seems to be a bad dad. But my real question is, your performances with Nana. There's something special there between the two of you. I just wanted to give you an opportunity.
Nana's such a nice woman.
Yeah.
She's a wonderful woman, but there's a nurturing mother-like relationship that I feel that you guys
the only mother I really knew.
Right.
Yeah. Like that was everything to me. And that was, it's funny when anyone searches for a home, a literal home, a figurative home, when people search to belong, they can't bear losing the belonging. That's really the number one human need, is to belong, right? And she made me feel as though I belonged. She saw me, and she saw the things that I loved and the beauty in me, and she was proud of me. And I had never it helped me grow as a being, you know. I was going to say as a person on the earth. They're like, you weren't on the earth.
as a Bajoran, you know,
as a Bajoran.
As a
Bajor Kardashian
person. But you know that, you know, like when you whether a child has like a favorite teacher, a coach, or an auntie, or something, you know, and they just thrive to get that feedback and that love and that encouragement. That is right. That is our relationship. And in the, you know, I think in the last, I haven't seen it in a million years, but in the last episode when I die and Mark says to me, you know, we're going to leave. And it's like, this is my home. This is all I've ever known. This is the place that feels like everything I hear everybody else naturally talk about or come from. And this is it for me, you know, and Nana was a big part of that. And so was Andrew. Yeah. I think, you know, I think I really loved Andrew. And I had worked with Andrew before, which was kind of fun.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Trancers, a movie called Trancers. It was myself, Andrew was Helen Hunt, and Tim Thomerson. Yeah. Yeah. It was fun.
You know, one of the moments as I was watching this episode, this last scene where you're dying, I thought you have a moment where you tell your father that you love him. You're like, I love you. And what was so powerful about that moment for me is how many times I hear people say, I never heard I love you from my father or from my mother, or I never heard those words. And when you say those words, it kind of reminded me of all the people that haven't heard those words or are waiting to hear those words. And it felt like Ducat was almost, you know, he's been waiting to hear you say that. And it was like the moment he finally got that approval from you, that the connection with you, like, I love you moment, it all got ripped away from him. And it was just brilliant writing, I thought, for that scene and the way you played it.
And what was so beautiful when we talk about, jokingly but not, how Shakespearean, right? You know, there's always a little something when it comes to Shakespeare where you're like, is that kosher or is it right? So like, is that the Oedipal thing? You know, like, is that, you know, right? And so that moment between me and my father, it almost had a hint of romance, right? And I think between children and their parents, there is that purity of love that is quite romantic, right? Like when you have something with a parent that you're so close with, and when I say romance, I mean the essence of that warmth and purity and fearlessness and vulnerability, right? Not meaning, you know, inappropriateness, but the ability to just drop all veils and to be in the haze of that softness. That is something that's quite Shakespearean, right? And it leaves on the table how pure love can be between any two human beings, right? And when you're in the moment of that kind of opening, like, okay, we're going to be really vulnerable with each other, right? And then it gave him permission to soften and to touch my face and to just finally come together in a true sense of love, which made that juxtaposition of taking the laser in my gut, right? Like, it wasn't even like a pretty death. It was like she burned him. I mean, like worms crawl out and stuff, but you know, it was just like fire in my gut. And then I was, you get worried because like you can play things theatrically, but the camera's so different, on screen is so different. So like you have to find that you can't go like, oh, you know, you have to find like, what's it going to look like, you know, a pathetic, like, all right, we cut, we got to do that again. Or like, what's really happening in a person when they experience that, which I did study a bit. Like I really did study up on it before the scene. Right. So anyway, it was, I think in my whole career, that was probably one of the top 2 or 3 most powerful scenes I played.
Wow.
One of the storylines on World Turns that I got nominated for and won a couple of awards for was when I am raped, attempted rape, but I get beaten. And it's by my ex-lover, James Stenbeck, who died 11 times on the show, because you can do that.
He deserved it for that. He deserved it for that.
It's like, oh, James is bad again. And it was always Anthony Herrera who came back, wonderful guy. And, you know, when you get to truly go to the depth of the pain of being human, that's when the work becomes so apparent to you. That's when you realize you have access to yourself in a way that most people don't have the opportunity to. You know, so it was really, it's a real gem in my life, that scene.
Does that take anything? You know, does it take you to a place where you feel some type of emotional trauma when you have to go to a place like being raped and mentally put yourself there? Do you walk away from that, any trauma?
We had a day player for that scene who kept forgetting his lines.
Oh.
Yeah. Not
just to extend the scene.
Now's not the time. Now's not the time.
And he had one line.
Oh no.
Wow. And on daytime it's 3 camera.
I'm sorry,
right?
Melanie, that was me. You can can admit it. I only had one line. And so
the character had one line, and we had to keep going back to 1. And finally, after like the 16th take, I was curled up in a ball crying, going, I can't keep doing this. Like, either fire him
or fire me.
Figure out a way to fix this in the edit, because I'm not doing this more, right? And if you ever, the scene's online, if you ever see the scene where James Stenbeck tries to have me killed, you'll see, I mean, I'm getting punched in the stomach, I'm getting thrown on the floor, I'm getting punched in the face. I mean, it was real physical work. And I'm screaming, and Paul, who comes in to save me, whose virginity I did take. I have to say thank you.
Wow, this is better than I thought.
Oh my gosh.
There were, I did. They had to find me. I was like, I think I was like in the green room, just sobbing my eyes out, going like, I can't keep doing this, guys. We got to figure this out. So yes, it does. And I don't know if it's just, if it like takes me to a traumatic place, but the body and the mind get exhausted. You know, there's only so many times you can pull on that.
Yeah.
You know, before you're just cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I take you back a little bit to Deep Space Nine as a whole? A lot of people are not prepared for the enormity of the set, or the enormity of, you know, the crew and the elaborateness, if that's a word, elaborateness of everything around them. Is there anything that like sticks out in your mind when you first walked in? Were you blown away by how big the set was? Was there somebody on the crew that was just extra nice to you that just made your stay that much easier?
First of all, I have to say everybody on Deep Space Nine was absolutely lovely. I mean, and I really, really mean, they were consummate professionals, and they were generous, and they were fun, and I was a funny actor in the way that I think I got so deep into what I was doing that I didn't really notice a lot of that stuff. It was really, you know, even when I went on to Seinfeld, my first day on set there, everybody was coming up and doing stuff and whatever. And I finally just went, hey, cut. Like, you guys, everybody needs to introduce themselves to me and tell me what your job is. And like Jerry went, and Larry went, like, who is she? Right? And they all walked up and they like shook my hand and they're like, is that okay? Now, who am I listening to? So I was in my job, right? And if I can't do my job, I say, I can't do my job this way. It's not, oh my God, I'm on set with these people. Or the one thing I will say about Seinfeld is they had the best craft service, but whatever.
All right.
Nice.
I wanted in a bag with cream cheese and lox. It was great. So I was there to do my job, and anything that was going to impact me not doing a great job, I addressed. But everything else, I think I always just knew I would walk into something magic, right? Like, it's all make believe, so it had to be magic, right? I remember the one was it like the main set where there was like the restaurant, and then there was like the long windows, right?
Yeah.
That was my favorite because I always kind of felt like, I don't know, was I at an airport or, like, it's an airport, I parked my car, there's like, so I didn't notice those things. I noticed the exchange between people and how to get the scene right. I think that's really where my head was always at. But there was an enormity to the set. And the one thing that I struggled with was I had to do a scene, and I don't remember what it was in. Maybe you guys remember. I was in like a glass case, almost like a coffin, but like, do you guys remember that? I was in like a thing.
I do not.
Not off the top of my head.
It was certainly a previous episode.
Yeah, it was a previous episode. And I can't remember, I don't remember what it was for.
Must have been an injury.
I kept going, I already got to open the thing. There we go. Open the thing.
How big was it?
It almost was like a glass tube. It was almost like.
So it was an individual sized one.
Yeah. And I remember just like going, all right, we're done with the scene. Can somebody open it up? That was a little weird for me. But other than that, I think all the sets, I think what was fun was knowing how kind of fake they were. Like something looked like concrete and you're like, it's just.
This isn't metal.
Styrofoam. God. Yeah, that was kind of funny to me because you see that stuff on TV and then you're like, oh, it's just plastic. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things I kept actually was one of these. It's a rock, but it's hollow, and you can throw it at somebody. It looks like it's a hard ass rock, but it's literally it's hollow. It squishes in your hand if you roll, if you squeeze on it.
Yeah, you just have to cut the bottom out and put your key in there and hide it by your
yeah.
It's Odo.
It's great. Yeah, right. It's Odo. I think I got it from the caves, one of the caves, and it was filled with them. And I said, "Wow, this stuff is great. I got to take one of these home with me." So I took the rock. Was there anything that you saw around you that you're like, "Hey, this is cool. I'd like to take that with me"?
I didn't, and I don't even think there was anything like small enough to kind of like walk out the door with.
Yeah. Maybe Quark.
I might have if I could get it, if I could detach it, I might have.
Yeah. That's awesome. So let me ask you, because Star Trek is the weird phenomena of people continuing to gather at conventions and celebrate the work that's been done, and it's unlike other things. I don't know if they do that with Seinfeld or other shows, but what has that experience been like for you? Doing conventions and meeting the Star Trek fans and community.
There are no fans like Star Trek fans. When I went to the convention, and I think I was saying this earlier, right, when we were off camera, that the night before I was appearing, I kind of went from like the little restaurants and the bars just to like listen. I wanted to hear, right, because I was never in the room with the fans before, really, right. And when I got up to speak, there were 6,000 people in the room. And I said, I've never met a group of people like this before, that like if everybody in the world cared this much about something that unified them the way this does, we'd all be happy. And it was such a beautiful thing to witness. You know, people think, oh, Trekkies, right? They're like geeks about something, which we're all geeks about something, right? Whether it's, you know, electronics or, you know, my son loves anime or, you know, like so music or dance or yoga, whatever. But there's this, like I was sitting in the restaurant and one of them said, well, when that storyline happened in 1960, whatever, but they lost that thread in 2000, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking like, what did I have for lunch yesterday? Really? Like,
yeah.
Like that's how committed they are. And it is an amazing thing to see. They love this. They don't just watch it and love it and, you know, oh my God, I have a crush on that one, or
They do that too.
Like that too. They do. But like daytime fans are very much like that too. You know, so I found the community, I think in a way I was similar to Tora Ziyal at the convention, because I was looking at them like, this is like Disneyland, you know? Like they were walking around in these costumes and they had to cost a fortune, by the way, those costumes. They were not, you know, just cut some construction paper and glue it on your head kind of stuff. Like they had costumers make these things, you know?
Some of them,
so
make themselves. Yeah.
So that, you know, that was a discovery that I hadn't made before, was who are the people who really love us. And that was cool. Did that answer your question?
No, it answered it absolutely. And actually, while you were answering it, the thought came to my head. I was like, you said Tora Ziyal, and I was like, wait a minute. The ambassador of peace, this loving person who's wholesome, her name is Tora.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I didn't think of that before. Okay. You played the human embodiment of the Torah. That was great.
That is nice connect. You didn't Z all this before until she said it. So we only have a couple minutes left. And before we go to the free for all with our associate producers and talk much more about this episode, but before we go, Melanie, everybody wants to know, we kind of know a little bit, but everybody wants to know, what have you been up to lately? What's new with you? We haven't seen you in several years. What are you up to?
Well, I left the business to raise my son. That's really why I left. I was finding
Ducat should have done the same.
Yeah, I was doing a series with my best girlfriend on Lifetime called The Division, and I realized like I wasn't a good mom, and I wasn't the kind of actress I wanted to be, because I was with my son on set, and I was with my work when I was with my son. So I left, and I moved back to Pennsylvania, and I opened a magnificent wellness center. We became recognized globally, and I ran and produced events there. I had some of the top wellness celebrities come and do events, and we had yoga and all of that kind of stuff. And in that process, I went back to university and got many different certifications and licenses and whatnot. And what I do now is I coach people to their better lives. I work with, not only do I work with people who want to elevate what they do, I work with people who want to change what they do. I work with reinvention. But one of the deepest things I do is I help people in grief recovery, in heartbreak recovery. And it's such a blessing, especially now post-COVID. People are really wanting to change their lives. They're finding different meaning in their life. They've suffered losses. They've suffered loss of identity. And so I really do work with people to go from where they may be stuck into having the life of their dreams. And my book is coming out next year. And, I love my work. And in a way, the work I do now is from the heart of Ziyal, right? I've always just wanted to love and help people grow as a human being. And it's, I think, why I related to the character so deeply. And I've always been on a spiritual mission, and I've always been a teacher of higher level living and higher purpose and what is right and wrong in the way we love and change each other's worlds. And there's a beautiful Mayan saying that says we're on this earth to fix each other's thatched roofs. And the day we all have metal roofs is the day our souls die. So I spend my life helping people fix their thatched roofs. That's what I do.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
And what's the, you've got a website, right?
I do. It's called workwithmelaniesmith.com.
Workwithmelaniesmith.com. We'll include that in the description box below. Final question regarding that. You're also working on a book, right?
I am. It will be released next year. I won't give out the title yet, but it's a life changer.
Wow.
Heart healer, a life changer. And it's basically the culmination of my intellectual property. I've helped thousands and thousands of people with this work globally, and I finally am putting it into book form, and it will be out next year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How will we find it? Should we just check in on your website here and there?
Yes, and I will let you know.
Right. You said that with certainty. You're like, don't worry. Don't you worry.
Don't worry.
Right.
I'm calling you in the middle of the night.
Are you on the West Coast?
I'm on the East Coast.
Okay, so yeah, if you call in the morning, it will feel like the middle of the night to us. Yeah. Pennsylvania. Great. Well, I guess that's about it for us. But Melanie, this has been so cool. We really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with us.
Absolute pleasure.
And for being so fun. We haven't laughed this much since, I don't know, probably last time, but still, it was still, you've been great.
So
we really
great.
appreciate your time. And thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I can't thank you enough for having me. And I do want to say to all the fans out there, you really are loved and appreciated. And I want to thank you for changing my life. Being able to not only be a storyteller, but to also be in front of people. It was a great gift. And I'm humbled and always grateful for your presence energetically in my life. And I'm cheering you on from out here in Pennsylvania. And thank you guys for your time and your effort and doing what you do, especially in this crazy time when people need us the most.
Well,
all right, everybody.
Thank you.
You heard her. What she meant to say was message Creation Entertainment and tell them that you want to see Melanie Smith at the next convention so she can sell her book.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to see more Melanie.
Definitely.
What a pleasure.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody at home. Stick around for the free-for-all. Oh, and also, most importantly, we do want to give a very special thanks to Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Yvette Blackmon, Tom Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy, Eve England out in Wales, Dr. Marie Segal, Dr. Susan B. Gruner, Tim Baum, Titus Mohler, John Mann, Darlena Marie, Rex A. Wood, and Cirroc's like, come on, give it to me. Bill Victor Arucan. All right, sorry. Melody's like, well, good thing you saved that for last because you scared me off.
Language, so that's cool.
All right, we'll see you on the pre-pro. We'll be right back on
the
seventh
God bless.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule. This is the free-for-all. We've got, well, Melissa, Longo, and Cirroc Lofton, of course. So it's already an amazing day for everybody. But on top of that, Goldu Scott has joined us. Rex A. Wood is popping in as we speak. Eve England out in Wales is here and in Wales. Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy is also here with the cool background of the Defiant and the Fleet and all that good stuff. And Marie Segal is calling in from Lower Manhattan,
No, Midtown.
I don't know what that means.
It's a bunch of blocks up.
The middle of town.
The middle of town.
That's it's an abbreviation of middle. Of town.
Interesting theory. Rex A. Wood is joining us. Rex, we just hit record. Your perfect timing.
Great. I was worried I was going to be late.
Not at all. Right on time. Good to see you.
Right.
With the awesome picture in his background of
Yes.
Nog. Wow, look at that. We're going to spotlight you for just a second, Rex, so we could see that picture. Look at that.
There you go.
Aw.
Beautiful. Seventh rule in
Then
the
you
background.
love
as well.
my little bumper sticker below it, which he would definitely go for.
What does it say?
What does it
Anybody
say?
get what it says? Go back and look at it.
It's too
Oh,
small.
yeah.
Divided.
Equal is greater than division.
divide.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Nice.
absolutely.
It's a math
That's
joke,
great.
Homer.
I get it. Took me a while, but I got it.
I don't know what that's like 3 times I've come at you today already, Homer. I don't know what it is.
I'm ready. Keep it coming.
Sorry. Okay.
I'll save something up for you.
Okay. So Cirroc, we have not had the chance since we had such a great time talking with Melanie, who played Tora Ziyal. We have not had a chance to do Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Ooh, this is a great episode. Let's see, with all this stuff going on, I would say this is another 8.5 in my book, maybe even higher.
Okay.
But I'll stick with 8.5.
Is there anybody that doesn't know the IMDb score that would like to take a guess?
Yes.
Go for it, Homer.
I actually was going to give it an 8.5 as well. I don't think I have to guess differently.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Anybody else? Anne-Marie knows
I
what
think-
it is. She gave it a 10.
I know what it was before I gave it a 10. It's even higher now.
Affected it. Anybody else?
I think
Rex?
it should be higher than 8.5, maybe
Yeah.
8.6 or 8.7. Yeah, let's go for 8.7. It deserves that, at least.
I'll-
I already know what it is.
I'll say 8.9. This is a good episode. This
It's
is
a good
really
episode.
Yeah, it's really hard.
8.5,
The last
8.6, 8.9. Do I hear a 9? Do I hear a
10.
9?
9.
There's a 9 over here.
You got a 9.
All right. Well, if anybody guessed $1, they would not win this time. The winner is Goldu Scott. It is a 9.1.
Wow.
Wow.
Last ditch effort.
Cool.
Yep, last
Glad to
ditch.
hear it.
Very cool.
This might be the highest rated that we've seen so far. 9.1 is pretty high up there.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're like 4 or 5. I went back and looked to see because that is super high. I think Duet's one. I don't
Yeah.
remember what the others are.
Okay. At
This is
9.
That's
definitely
impressive, though.
in that highest
Yeah.
stratosphere. Probably
And actually,
because
this whole 6-episode arc is in like the high 8s.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing.
do you guys think
Every
it's a
episode
9.1 because it's better than all the others, or do you think it's a 9.1 because it's the culmination and closure of a really great and historic 6-episode arc?
Probably the latter, I would assume.
That's what it feels like to me.
And
Yeah.
both,
Really
yeah.
memorable
And-
things happen just in this one.
Mhm.
It's just great writing, ultimately.
Mhm.
It comes down to really good writing. And I wish that the new Star Trek people would kind of incorporate some of this great writing into their stuff,
Absolutely.
because this is just on a level of its own. And, not to knock what they're doing, but just the way they script this dialogue,
Yeah.
it's so rich. It's so meaty. You were saying earlier about coming at Homer.
I know, poor
But-
Homer.
but I would say in this episode there was a lot of coming at somebody. Wei Yun did a lot of that. Ducat did a lot of it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so did Demar.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I really love the scene Ducat and Wei Yun when they're kind of going over the battle plans, and they're looking at all the formations. And I think Ducat says something like, "You do see it, don't you?" like
oh my God,
like really.
And Wei Yun's like, "Well, of course, but I could never say it as eloquently as you."
I know.
Yeah.
Yes, that exchange between the two of them was classic to me. It was just pure magic. And I love the way they were just throwing daggers at each other back and forth as many times as they could. I think there was another time when Wei Yun says to Ducat, he says, "Yes, occupying Bayshore, we all know what a disappointment that was." And he just
I know.
he sings Ducat like, "How would you like that? Take that with you." So the lines, once again, just the way the dialogue is written, and the stories, the characters that you actually believe their motivation, their intentions, and each one of them has their own purpose for what they're in it for in some sort of a way. So the way the writers incorporate the poems in this, I think there was a poem that they were reciting, just like so many, the layers of detail that the writers put into these episodes, into these scripts. I think there was a point where he says, "What was the last line of that poem?" And
You
call him.
Yeah.
Hey, Rex. Oh,
Yes.
sorry. I was just gonna say, Rex.
No,
it looks like you might know what that poem was. I did not know. Is that a real poem?
It's
And what is it?
it's the
is.
Light Brigade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the
Jensen.
yeah.
It's
It's
about
from the.
Crimean
Go
War.
ahead, Eve.
Oh,
Yes,
cool.
Crimean War,
Yep.
and it was basically
Yep.
a battle between the Russians and the British, where there was some miscommunication somewhere from the generals, and it was basically a suicidal mission with 600 men, and they just pretty much, they just got decimated because it was a really rubbish, stupid order for them to charge at this against the enemies, and it just all went horribly wrong. So I think the Lord Tennyson wrote the poem to commemorate those after the war, and then I think it's all about showing how brave soldiers are when they know they're going into this situation where there's no prospect of them winning whatsoever. And it also is, and the battle itself is used by military historians in terms of the importance of military intelligence, and how it makes a huge difference in the battles. And there was something in the companion actually that was saying that the writers did look and get advice from military experts in terms of the battle scenes, because they wanted it to be more than just a space battle. They wanted it to actually be a tactical scenes where, in terms of the strategy that they applied to the story. So I thought that was really interesting how they brought that, and then brought the poem and all of, like I said, Cirroc is just such clever. It's not just clever writing, it's the background and the effort they go to and the detail. You don't even necessarily need to understand all of that, but if you do, it adds that other layer, which just is just so intelligent. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
Ditto.
I love it.
I was gonna say that's got the flavor of Robert Hewitt Wolf in there when you were talking about that, but he's gone.
Absolutely.
So they had to do that without their resident expert. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
The symbolism is so subtle and detailed too. Like, I love the moments with Ducat because he's constantly playing with the baseball, and it's kind of like he's got the upper hand over Sisko since they've retaken Deep Space Nine. But now, like Brian mentioned in the previous segment, when he lets it go, it's another symbol. And then when he gives it back to Sisko at the end, which that moment is brilliant. I mean, Marco Limo is brilliant in that moment when he says, "And I forgive you too." And I'm just like, holy shitballs.
Okay, Melissa,
Amazing.
you texted me, I love DS9 with a whole bunch of exclamation points. And when I saw that, my first thought was, I'll bet you she sent me that after that final line right there. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, it was right after I'd finished the episode. And I was just like, my goodness gracious, I could watch that. There was just so much in his eyes and in his voice and the way he delivered that. There was so much subtext and so much going on. You could see the struggle that he'd already been through. And it was beautiful to watch and to show him giving that ball back to Sisko. And in a sense, admitting defeat, which is difficult for Dukat, knowing who he is.
Now, at the same time, one could argue that he's in a holding cell. He's been defeated. That baseball's going back on Sisko's desk, whether he gives it to him or not. So he's like, I'm going to be a bigger man. I'm going to go ahead and give you this baseball.
Yeah.
Oh, what a sweetie.
I don't think that's.
No, I know. Hey, I'll defend Dukat till the end of the days. Yeah.
No, it was great though. No, it was a great moment. Sorry.
No, not at all.
So good.
So Homer Frizzell out somewhere in New Zell. Do you have
New
any?
Zealand?
There's a slight eye roll.
I'm sorry, Homer.
Bluetooth connection successful.
You never know.
What was that?
Oh my gosh.
I
like
don't think it was here.
So yeah,
keep here.
Homer,
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts on this episode? Any fun points to make?
Ryan, it may be too early. But I have a nitpick.
I love he's got the props, he's got the glasses nitpick. I love it.
The movements too.
So we've been talking about the baseball. And I love the baseball as well, but there's a time where the baseball is not with Gul Dukat, which seems odd because he's walking around the station with it. And you should have, I don't know if you had a chance to ask the person who played Ziyal, but from watching the episode, there was no baseball that was going into her back as he was hugging her. And he didn't drop it.
Here's my
he didn't have a satchel.
Like tennis,
uniform
tennis
doesn't
skirt.
allow.
You just pop it under on the side. That's what you do for girls tennis.
Under the armpit.
Oh, okay. I don't know if the uniform allows him. So I don't know what he did with the baseball during that.
Maybe he was like a magician and was like,
still,
what's this behind your ear? Whoa.
Yeah. He's
a little close-up magic. Yep.
Maybe it went to the place that Sisko really wanted it to go up to call.
Just put it in a wall panel.
That's a solid nitpick.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's my nitpick. I loved it. I agree. Better than 8.5 is wonderful. And there's so much in this episode that sends different characters off in different directions. We have Nog, who's going to be the boss of his father in engineering.
Yes.
We have Sisko, whose future has kind of been hinted at now. And we have the craziness of Dukat, who's gone off the deep end, and we'll see what happens there. So it's like this huge, huge moment, big enough to be probably a season ender, but it's the end of the first six episodes.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah. So much. You're right. The way everybody ends kind of opens up a new storyline. It doesn't just close this one, but yeah.
And we have a marriage coming up.
Next episode.
Yes.
Wow. That's really interesting. Yeah. The way, and Odo and Kira kind of have like a new beginning there.
And when Kira's getting into the I want to say Jeffries too, but I don't think that's what's called on DS9. And he says, I think you know the reason.
Right.
Essentially. Yeah.
What's the reason, Anne-Marie? Why are you squealing?
They're so romantic. I love it. I love Deep Space Nine couples.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the thought of Kira's death is, I think, what ultimately snaps Odo out of his delusion of his romantic view of his people and what he thinks that he could be or what they are. And yeah, I have a feeling, no, I think paradise isn't really paradise if he's willing to leave it, you know?
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
So is he saying that the female changeling is like way better than Kira right there? Because he's like, oh, she is paradise, but I'm picking you.
No, because the link isn't just the female changeling. It's bigger than that. But he is picking Kira because paradise can get boring.
Someone needs to feed their cat.
Yeah.
That's Rocket. The other cat.
Mr.
He's a
Goldie
talker.
Scott, you've got a lot of observations to toss at us in this episode that has much good stuff in it.
Oh man.
What say
boy.
you?
What about the moment where Odo pops up? I'm like, wait, what is that? That's Bajorn phaser fire. And he's like, I'll never underestimate the element of surprise. Do you think he was trying to play off that he was just kidding that whole time? And it was really like he's just been washing around and pretending?
He did kind of
he kind of leaned on that a little bit. Like he was like, oh yeah, I was just no, I was just joking the whole time.
Yeah, good one. We know.
Yeah. It was all military tactics. That's what it was. Was he trying to get away with something there on that one? Oh
Totally.
man, yeah, that was one of the. I didn't. This is the first time I noticed it.
Yeah. It was like that's the A-team when he breaks in there. Never underestimate the element of surprise.
Yeah,
I got you this time. I got you. Yeah. Wait till you see what I do next time, and you'll never believe what it is. That's how you get away with doing whatever you want. You just attack that military tactics right on the end.
And I'm always like, oh my god! Every time I watch this, and I'm like, are we gonna get a return of that rat? Who was such a good actor and ran through the cargo bay.
Oh man, the rat.
As Odo.
Or the cart with the food on it. That was a great.
Yeah.
It pops up and he's
the craft services cart.
Yeah.
Oh man. Odo just pops up with his hijinks. But specifically watching this one again last night, just seeing how Mark Limo and Jeffrey Combs just really, it felt like they'd been acting together their whole lives. And let's not also forget Casey Biggs in that whole scene, because you're so ready, and particularly when you've watched it a bunch of times and you know what's about to hit, kind of literally. You're just waiting for that moment for Ducat to just crack and fall down, which it gets more brilliant and nuanced every single time he's like, I'm sorry, I forgive you. He's still so delusional. She's dying in front of him, and he's still so far gone. I forgive you, not please forgive me for letting you get blasted by my henchmen. But then Casey Biggs' face in the background when he just goes, no, she's a traitor, and he so far believes it. He's so deep in believing the propaganda that they're raised in on the planet, like this fascist propaganda from birth, which was another real fun thing about Andrew Robinson's Stitch in Time book, was the world building that he did with that of the fascists.
So good.
From birth, you're thrown into your house like your Hogwarts house, except this is like gardeners and assassins and stuff. But so it's a little different. But yeah, and it's the Cardassia stuff is a lot of fun for me to watch all that because you automatically hate them, obviously. But yeah, everybody just killed it in this episode. And my personal opinion is this is probably the greatest space battle I've seen on television. If there's anything that comes close to it, I mean, movies and stuff like that might be one thing, but I still, as a kid, I couldn't believe it, and I can't believe it now. I'm watching this. Oh my God, is there two Enterprises? What's happening? No, it's Galaxy class, and and saucer sections are exploding, and then the Klingons come in, and we're happy about it. Like they must have, like, yeah, the Klingons are here. Yeah, so it's got every bit. One of my favorite films ever. The reason that it's my favorite film is because it covers so many different types of storytelling in it, and this episode does the same thing. There's funny moments, there's hugely tragic moments, there's moments that make you question morality or what your morality is, and it's just got everything in it. And then there's a beginning, middle, and end in one episode and it all plays together so perfectly, and everybody's part. I think the writing, acting, lighting, everything, CG, all of it, right down to working on the pads. And the old Doug Drexler was on this, wasn't he? He had to be with all those ships.
He had to.
Well,
it had to be Doug. Yeah.
Well, this was the first episode that the battle scene was entirely done with CGIs.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to get like 2 different companies, and I guess one did evil and one did good ships.
Really?
Oh, that's so cool though.
What I heard.
That's a good ship. But yeah, I actually thought of you, Cirroc, when I was watching this, because I was like, I don't think Cirroc's ever seen this big elaborate battle scene before. What did you think of it when you saw that? Were you like, yeah, Star Trek's pretty good back in the 90s? Or were you like, whatever?
No, I liked it. I mean, I was kind of like what Goldie Scott was talking about. I was watching and saying, how many ships are there? And I was trying to differentiate which one's on our side and who's not on our side, and what kind of a ship that is. So yeah, there was a lot of action going on. But the beauty of it is they weren't relying on that action to carry the story. Normally they kind of use action.
Right.
Yeah, they use action as a crutch to say, okay, well, we need to fill space and let's just throw that in there. But in this case, it was really a sideline to the story. Like the story itself was really what grabbed me. The action was just extra gravy on top, but it wasn't the main thing for me. I just love the subtle nuances of each performance in this. Like we talked about how great Ziyal was. I love the way Sisko was leading in that moment. There was a comfort for me. Like I saw him sitting in the chair early on, and he had his legs crossed, and I was like, he looks so comfortable in that captain's chair, and so sure of himself. So I love the way he did. I love the way he argued his case against the prophets, the Bajoran prophets. Like he's like, no, that's not true. You're wrong. You guys are lying. This doesn't add up. If I'm going to use your logic, then we have to apply it this way. And he basically, used their own logic and rationale against them. I thought that was clever. And I don't know about you guys, but when I watched the wormhole scene and I saw the Jemadar ships kind of just disappear, it instantly made me think of the Exodus of Moses and the Red Sea collapsing in.
Interesting.
I didn't think of it initially, but it's totally,
very much so.
So once again, they incorporated that kind of biblical story into this prophet-like character of Sisko. So I mean, you just keep peeling them back, and it goes as deep as you want it to go.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's good stuff.
I have a question.
Yes. Oh, you even have your hand raised.
Yes, I'm going to lower it now. Cirroc, speaking of that scene, I mean, it's not Jake. So did the directors give you some sort of direction as to how to play it, and everybody else how to play it? Do you remember what they had said, if they said anything?
Yeah, by this time we had done this before, and I was thinking the same thing when we were watching it, just about the performance and how, just like in the Mirror universe, everybody alters their performance and they change their character a little bit. In this kind of Bajoran prophet universe, everybody's character is slightly changed as well. And I think that the key was to just not to show emotions, and just to be emotionless and more fact-based. So that was the kind of notes that we got early on when we first started doing these kinds of scenes. So by this point, we were kind of, knowing what to do. Obviously, each one of us has different connections to Sisko as our characters, but as these prophets, we're essentially assuming these bodies that Sisko would be familiar with and be comfortable with, right? I would assume that would be the case of an intelligent life form if they were to come here, would not present themselves in a way that you would feel fearful of them. So they would find a way to present themselves in a non-fearful way if they're that intelligent and advanced and godlike, quote unquote. So I think that that's accurate as far as where they started and where we are at now, as you know, in those dream sequences for Sisko.
Yeah,
It must have like Jake through the ages too. Like in the first like the pilot episode, you're like speaking as a prophet, and it's kind of like everybody does it, obviously, like all the actors, but seeing like Jake through the years doing it, it's like a really cute like way to see you grow up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize
I found
this.
it interesting to see Gul Dukat and Wayun and Damar as prophets, and that the baseball was in the scene as well. So I enjoyed it.
I noticed those guys too. That was really interesting. Melissa, you were saying something?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to give Cirroc a compliment. For there was a line you had where you said, "We don't agree," and gosh, that was such a good moment. It was like, yeah, it was not Jake Sisko. It felt like a prophet talking to Sisko, and I was like, oh, and I had to rewind it, and I was like, oh, good job, Cirroc.
Thank you, Melissa.
Nice.
Yeah, there was a moment too there in that same moment where Sisko's walking around the table and he kind of passes by me, and you know, under normal circumstances, if we were in close proximity, there would be some kind of interaction between the two of us, and there was a deliberate resistance of that, so that we were not playing our characters the way we would traditionally play them. So yes, it's fun to kind of play a character that's not his son, right? I felt like in those moments I'm not really his son,
right?
And so I can talk to him and talk to him in a little bit of a different tone and approach it a little bit differently. Yeah,
give him a tone.
The relationship is different.
Yeah, I'll give you a tone.
Yeah, give your dad a tone. So I didn't realize this, but we're already almost out of time, and I know there's just so much to talk about with this episode. So for that reason, Eve, England, out in Wales, final thoughts?
I think it's just a great arc, isn't it? The 6 episodes, you've got arcs within arcs in terms of all the different characters. We haven't mentioned Quark's bravery, and I just love how we see his shock at the end, because he's actually shot people. And I think you forget, it comments in the companion, and Armin comments on it, and he said it's just, you forget how it's just normal for Starfleet, they're trained to be fighters and to be able to use blasters and phasers and all sorts of things, but for Quark it's the first time he's had to be brave, and the last 6 episodes have made him that way. And I just think that was one of the, and it's quite profound when you see that, and you see how the occupation of these six episodes has changed everyone, because they've all experienced such, they weren't necessarily tortured or anything like that, but it was just, the occupation itself, and the way that we saw Kira, gradually finding herself thinking, oh my gosh, I'm almost a collaborator here. It was how they've all been moved very sort of profoundly because of this experience. And I thought, the Quark moment at the end of that just sort of hit that home for me in this episode. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, there's so many story arcs.
My Deep Space Nine crush.
Yeah, he is. He's everybody's crush on Deep Space Nine. So we do have to run, though. There's so much more to talk about on this episode. Maybe we'll catch up a little bit on next week's Free for All as well, because I want to ask Cirroc more stuff about when they're doing the prophets, those scenes there. Anyway, are the wormhole aliens? I'll cry. So we do have to run. Everybody at home, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Homer, Golda Scott, Eve, Anne Marie, and of course, for Melissa Longo, myself, Cirroc Lofton, the coolest dude ever, Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all for joining us. And always remember the 7th rule. Go give this episode a 10 on IMDb.
Yes.